topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Are you ready for Insights to Incite? Ready or not, it's showtime. Now get ready to listen in and watch right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Join us and together we will escape the mundane. Insights to Incite, here is your host, Brandon Lawson.
Hello. As many of you know, we are entering a new series this week, and I want to speak with you about it. And but first, just want to thank all you who listen in and those who view on Talk 4 TV. And we are going to start this series titled Matters That Matter. And, we think of the different things, matters that matter. I chose that title because, and wanted to speak on these things because what point is it to bring you stuff that's totally irrelevant? No one wants to listen to something that doesn't even apply to their life or that. And, these matters matter to us. And it's pretty universal, you could say. I mean, it's something that, you might find some exceptions, as I'll often allude to. But for the most part, I believe these subjects we're going to talk about, they, are, many would say even critical, of utmost importance. But so today I, want to speak with you about health. And the term health, it encompasses a lot. I mean, years back, decades ago or so, I when I heard of health, it was, someone was speaking of a medical or mental condition. And that was sort of the extent of what they were referring to if they talked about the health of someone. But today we hear it spoken of in so many different capacities. We hear it spoken of from the medical, the mental, as well as relational, financial, and, a whole slew more. We even have a whole new field of health and wellness that a quarter of a century ago was non-existent, or it might have been just beginning, but it was hardly heard of. And now it's prevalent all over. But the term health, as we think of this, whatever realm of health we're referring to, one thing that's common among all of them is it's personal. Our health is a personal matter, whether you're talking about, yourself, your loved ones, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers. And it's personal because of the effect it has on us personally. And as we think of that, most folks would give an affirmative if you said, does your health matter to you? Or do you think health is important? Maybe here and there you might say some would say no, but I mean, for the most part, you're going to get an affirmative. But in that respect, it's odd and it's sort of sad. I find it in many different things, but health is certainly one. And that is, there's so many things that we profess to be important. Some would say utmost importance, yet our lives don't quite say the same thing. Have you noticed that? Have you seen how, someone who would, speak of something that, of being very important, and, and you don't get the idea they're lying. In their heart, they really hold that as a value or hold that dear or whatever. But the life they live would say anything but. And I know I struggle with that in some respects, some areas. I mean, and that, but I've never been a health expert by any stretch. I've, have had some medical conditions and stuff. And at one time, many of you may not know, and many of you who know me today didn't know me then, I was over 270 pounds. And now I'm 190, right around 198 or whatever, but I'm a little under 200, and that, and, And I didn't grow up in a family that made health a priority. You know, you might get come down on if you did something that was unhealthy, but it wasn't really encouraged. It was just punished if you didn't do it. And I think that's one of the problems we have, whether we're talking about, a healthy lifestyle and your diet and exercise or your money or whatever, is, too often, whether it comes from the parental figures in your home as you're being raised, or just however, it's not all that encouraged to be proactive in bringing it about. It's just if you don't bring it about, you're punished. And that kind of treatment of that system of discipline, if you will, it doesn't work with many in that. But with all that said, as we think of this and the health, and that of yourself, myself, our loved ones, we need to be mindful of different things that are, of what really goes on. I mean, I think to myself, in that respect of how it's not so much encouraged, it's just punished if it's not. That doesn't motivate me. That doesn't get me eager to do something for the good. And we struggle in that respect. And the problem is when we get to a point to where our, what we profess to be important, but our lives don't say such, what we are in fact doing is we're living a lie. Yes. You heard that correctly. It's not we're living a life. We're living a lie. And why? Why do we succumb to that or find ourselves in that state? Because I think that's what happens more often than not is, rarely is anybody planned to just going to go off course and not, be living out the life they deem that they want to live or that they desire. It's just more little choices along the way lead to big changes. And most time those little choices, more often than not, are not on the positive realm, not for good change, but for things that whether it's cutting corners, it's like, I know I shouldn't have these sweets, but it's just a little bit, or I know I need more rest, but I need to get this done. Or I know, I don't really need this, and that I could survive if I didn't buy it, but I want it. And then we do it. And then little by little, what seemed like it was relatively small, minor within itself. And in fact, more often than not, once again, it was minor within itself. But you take minor, 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 on and on and on, and it becomes major, 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 as we all know. And, and none of us want to be that person who lives a lie. We don't want to be described as such. We don't want to associate with such. But we can often find ourselves falling into that very depiction, that character. And I want to talk with you as to why I believe some of that happens and, and the different factors that go into it. And also just give some ideas of what you might do, what I might do to see that we can reverse that trend. But first, before we get into that, I do want to step away for just a brief moment and we'll be right back.
Wow, that was insightful. Stay tuned as we go on a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Insights to Incite right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Are you seeking a speaker or coach who speaks life into your people? If so, look no further. Brandon Lawson is one who will inspire and motivate his audience, as well as empathize and relate to all. Reach out to Brandon and let him be your speaker and life coach by sending an email to brandon@connectandimpact.net or calling him at 513-520-7597. Brandon looks forward to speaking with you, to you, and for you. Let's connect and impact today. Insights to Incite, a real show with real-life messages. This show, which can be found on radio, TV, and our podcast, gives us insight to incite us to action and to excellence. Watch and or listen to Insights to Incite live at noon Eastern Time every Thursday on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Check out our past episodes on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Join us each week, and together we will escape the mundane. We are back with more Insights to Incite, so get ready and tune in to listen and watch. Now, once again, let's join Brandon Lawson.
Okay, so here we are back again, and we want to hint at some reasons why I believe we inadvertently fall into a state that we don't want to be, and why it is difficult for many of us to come up out of that state or that rut we fall into. And I believe, as mentioned, we discount the changes or the things we do that we know is not particularly healthy, not particularly good, because it being so small, and we discount the impact it will have. And and many times the reason it's discounted is because we don't notice that impact right at the outset when we do it. So it seems like it was not that big a deal, so that is one of the pitfalls or the traps, you could say, is, it's just minor. So you say a minor trap, is what that one can be classified as. And, as we think of that, and you may know of the story, or there was a book written by George Barna, the head of Barna Research, who does a lot of research and it looks at statistics and data that will talk about trends that happen, whether it be in the church or even in the world itself, but it often will be connected somehow with a Christian issue, or a faith matter, but he notices ongoing trends. And you even think to yourself, I don't know your background, but if you were raised in church and you're in your 40s or so, when you were a kid, or perhaps even a teenager, maybe as a teenager the trend might have already started, but it used to be years ago that if you come to church and you weren't dressed quote unquote appropriately, in terms of being dressed up, you were not a given, but chances are you could be looked down on. And no, that was never right for people to look down on you, and that, but it happened more often then, and that because it was expected that you didn't come in jeans or flip-flops and shorts or whatever, and so if somebody was to come in like that back then, red flags would have shot up. It would have been just totally alarming. And then, and today it's more common than being dressed up, And what we find is, if today's wardrobe would have been lived back 30 years ago or so, in the church, how that would have been very alarming, because it was such a drastic change. But what's happened that's led to this drastic change is these little things. It's not that big a deal. And, once one faith or one church religion does it, well, in fear of losing people to that other church congregation or to another faith altogether, this congregation decides they should, and they see that being the one did it, and they may people the outside of the church might see them in a better light because they do that. Now they get better reception from the outsiders, and that can bode well for reaching them. So then this other church does it. Then the next thing you know, a whole denomination says we're going to do this. Then on and on and on. And little by little, the changes are made, and it's like a 180 over time, complete change. And George Barna, he wrote a book called The Frog in the Kettle Pot. And where if a frog went into a steaming hot boiling water, it would hop out immediately. It would, it burn, it's going to jump and go, but if it was just simmering hot where maybe to withstand it, it's a little more hot than maybe once, but it's not unbearable by any stretch. And so here, it'll stay there. And then slowly little by little, it slowly dies. And that the heat, that change turned over time to be deathly. And I see that with our lives, since the little change, again, we don't often see that impact immediately. It doesn't, we don't see the damage done. In fact, we might even see good that came out of it. Or it might be that, it didn't have any ill effects and I actually enjoyed that. So that makes it worth doing. It ain't causing any harm. And then in time, it does cause much harm. And it also opens the door to other things to come in that cause much harm. And Jesus, he spoke of that, when he got in a boat, with his disciples to cross over to the other side of the sea there. And when he got in the boat, he said, "Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees." And here the disciples started talking amongst themselves, said, "I knew we should have brought that bread. I knew it." And Jesus, knowing their thoughts, said, "What is up with you?" I mean, that's not exactly the words, but he's like, do you still not get it? And he talked about how a little leaven thrown into a dough will enleaven the whole lump of dough, will make the whole batch leaven. And leaven was, in the biblical times, was often seen that's yeast, and that was seen as a mark or a symbol of sin. And he was saying that, beware of the Pharisees, because they'll start with something that's not right, it's sinful, and it's relatively minor. But look out, if you accept it or you don't dismiss it altogether, next thing you know, it'll spill over into this, then to that, then the whole batch of dough will be unleavened with sin, will be saturated with sin. And that's what happens when we think something we do, we know it's wrong, but it's not healthy, but it didn't really cause any harm. And then over time it does. So that's the first thing. We discount the impact of a minor change. Second is many times, it goes back to what I was saying about the church, where one congregation did it and they got a better reception from others. So, not wanting to lose our people to another congregation, another faith, we should do it. Well, that brings us to the second trap of how, you see it often with parenting. If the one family, they let their kids do something that, it isn't really right. I mean, sometimes that parent just has no morals, sadly. And so they say, go ahead, do it. Others might not want to let them, but they yielded because, maybe it's not as bad as I thought. But now those kids or those teenagers, get word over to your kids, and then your kids are using that against you, how you don't allow it, but they allow it. And then here you will, eventually concede to allow your kids to do the very thing they shouldn't. And then here they do that. Then that leads to something else where they're bending the rules. And next thing you know, there are no rules. Or if there are rules there, the kids have made the rules. They're the leaders. They lead the household, yet you provide the money and pay the bills. So it's that pressure trap. We tend to, in our desire to keep peace. And sometimes, it's we don't want to be seen as a meanie, as some, you're so strict, so hard, you there is nothing soft or no grace in you, and so people will see us as a hard-nosed, sort of like a punk, and not wanting to be projected in such an image or to be viewed in such a light, or maybe say in such darkness in that respect. But we concede and allow them to have what they want or do what they want. And then next thing we know, over time, That's how it comes to be, where we regret that we ever let them. When we say to ourselves, I knew I shouldn't have done that. Yet I did. You did. So we need to take a stand. We need to stand for what's right and recognize that we're going to have enemies even if we do good. So, and we're going to have enemies when we do bad. So we're going to have enemies no matter what. No one's ever going to, we're never going to be at a point where everyone agrees with us. We're going to have enemies no matter what choices we make. So if that's the case, should we not do what's right? Do what we know is best? It isn't like conceding will actually, cause our enemies to, to not be there. Like we won't escape the arch nemesis of people not liking us, even when we give them what they want. So why not give them what's right? Do what's right. And another issue we have is many times, and this is very common among in a majority of people, at least in the U.S. I can't speak of other areas of the world per se, and I believe from what I've understood to be that in many cases, other parts of the world, they're maybe not as reluctant or opposed to this, but the majority of people do not like change. And so, once we have conceded, whether it was out of the pressure of not wanting to be viewed as a jerk, or thinking that it isn't that big a deal or whatever, and that we veer off, and next we're in this other totally different life that we wish we never were in. And we, in time, first we might think to ourselves, what, really, I deserve it. I mean, the choices I made. And to ourselves, it's like we're taking responsibility, and so we're doing the right thing here. We're acknowledging our fault in the matter. Yet that's another trap, because while we do want to acknowledge our fault, what often comes out of that is not, no, I did wrong, but I'm going to change this. I'm going to make this better. I'm going to reverse this. We just say, I'm getting what I deserve. And that change, that mindset keeps us from changing. That's what I'm trying to say, is we do not make the changes. We just figure we're getting what we deserve, and I deserve this, so I just need to let it take its course. Got to suffer through it. I mean, that's what I get. And while it's good, again, to acknowledge your fault in it, and that you were in the wrong, or that I was in the wrong, we need to use that as motivation to fix things, to make it better, and not just to say, well, that's how it is. And so let's use that as, to move us to do what's right, but if we don't, if we fall to the dictate of, well, I deserve it, I'm getting what I want, as I said, we won't change, and what sets in then is complacency. But actually, even before that, over time, we become comfortable. We become comfortable with this way of life. Yeah, it's not good, but I'm coping, I'm managing, and that's, I get what I deserve. So, we have this comfortability with something that, in all reality, is not comfortable at all. In fact, we'd rather not be, but we've learned to live with it. So, that comfortability spills over into what we call complacency. If you learn to live with something, it sort of it zaps you. It drains you of the desire to get yourself going in the right direction, to get up and start creating that new path, for making a new path, walking in a new way of life. That's why we hear motivation, where people have said, I'll do it once I feel motivated. But there was a psychologist years ago from Harvard. It wasn't William James, but I'm not sure who it was off the top of my head. But he said motivation is an oxymoron. And he hinted at that very thing I just said. While people say, I'll do it once I'm motivated, what he alluded to is you have to start first. You have to, initiate the change in doing what you're going to do. And then you'll see results. And that's when motivation kicks in. But if we do not start at first and say, I'll do it once I'm motivated, we may never do it. And that's where we're just complacent. We leave it as it is. And, that's how it's to be. And yeah, and then over time, that complacency, and first we had this situation where we discounted the, what we did, the cost and what we were doing and how, it was wrong and that the consequences that would come. And then, we got the consequences and we acknowledge our wrong. And so in our mind, we're doing right. We're not blaming others. We're taking responsibility. We're acknowledging our own wrongdoing. And we then in time, we decide that would just lead us into learning to be comfortable with it. I'm getting what I deserve. And then over time that turns into complacency. And then as we keep moving through that, we see that complacency then will keep us where we are and will kill the motivation to do good, to change our life. But we need to step out, and before that motivation needs to be determination. Determination is something that comes from within. It's a volition of such. It's of the will. When someone, excuse me, when someone says, I am determined to get this done, they're saying, I will complete this. I am determined to lose this weight. They're saying, I will lose this weight. But your will is something internal. And anytime we make change or to get creating a new path that we know we should, ultimately that decision has to come from within. Someone telling you need to give up this bad habit or you need to start doing this or that. All it does is become a nag on us. If they're constantly telling us, even though we may know they mean it for our good, because what they're saying is right. But ultimately, where we will change is when it's an act of our will, when it comes from within. And so that's where we need to get to. We can't allow, the pressures in that of our family, our kids, or, the naiveness of this little thing doesn't matter, lead us down to a road we shouldn't. And we can't just accept it and become comfortable with it and be complacent. We need to create that change. And there are all kinds of creative minds. You think of how all the new things that come out, technology for one, and then there's all kinds of others, health food and supplements that can cure certain things, or maybe not cure, but help you control it where you couldn't find anything to help control before your situation before. But there's constantly new things coming out on the market, being introduced to us left and right. And that comes out of creativity. So why is it? Why is it that we, can come up with all these new concepts, innovations, and everything, but we cannot create a way to make ourselves get going and doing the way we should, to be the person we know we should be? Why is it that we, sink into complacency? But that's something, you may want to think for yourself, take inventory. What is something that you been wanting to do, but you keep procrastinating? You write it down in your agenda for the day. You have it goals for the month and all that, but you never tackle them. You see the goals and you say, I need to do this, but you can't bring yourself to do it. Whatever your reason is, I don't know that we even need to know the reason. We just need to do it. Like that Nike slogan, just do it. Once we start doing and we then see the fruit of our efforts, we see the results, then we'll have a greater motivation. That motivation will kick in, and that will in turn create an inner drive, which is also of your will, but it's even a stronger drive, and it's a greater determination. It strengthens that desire, that determination, and then you could say in time it may even spill over into true devotion. And you see the progression that takes place, but it never will take place if you don't get out there and do it. And in our last series that we just finished, I talked about how are we to be, though. And, I specifically said, how are we to be, not what are we to do? Because if it's part of our being, then the doing flows. So maybe you can look at, what it is, about you, what is the things that you procrastinate on, and then get to doing. And then over time, maybe in doing and seeing different things about yourself, taking inventory and introspection, you can recognize, certain things of, how you are to be, or different, things to change. That it's a part of who you are. It's a part of your being. And then once that is a part of your being, then the doing will come more naturally. And that's what we're ultimately after, is not, well, we remembered to do it today, or we didn't think about it that time, or this time we did. We want it to be ingrained within us, where it's just reflective, or reflexive, I should say. Reflexive, where it happens almost in like an instinctive thing, but it's for good. And I've seen people who, I grew up with I didn't really have parents. It's a very abusive environment, but I've seen other people, who are faced with what looks like it's going to be just a horrible situation, or that, or how are they going to deal with that? And, without missing a beat, they handled it with such ease. And I used to be, when I first started seeing that, because I grew up in a family that my parents were anything but that type. But when I would see people like that at the very beginning, I was almost in awe. It's like, wow, I thought that was going to be a major thing, and that's going to be, a mess. You're going to have a hard time sorting out or getting out of, or, or fixing or whatever. And they made it look like it was so simple. And it wasn't an arrogance of this aura about them, but it was part of who they are. They just reflexively, almost like a part of the instinctive nature of them, just they knew what to do right in the moment, that diffused everything and worked itself out. And that's what we want to be. We want to be incited to do good, and we want it to be that it's not just us doing, but that it's part of our being. And so when we think of our health, what we need to do, whatever it is, do us a favor, do yourself a favor, step out and do it. And it may require you to start with very small steps, as we've all heard about baby steps. You think of that little infant, it's a toddler, taking his baby steps, seeing her, she walks, and next thing you know, she's running, and next thing you know, she's skipping, and now they're a full-grown kid, teenager, adult. Now they have their own family. It started with baby steps. So what is it about yourself, your health, that you need to change? Whether it be a diet, to exercise, more rest. It has to be with some things that you need to do away with, or maybe it's tendencies of spending money or not setting money aside as you should, or whatever it is. Start by doing something today. Do it. Be creative. Use your creative juices, those, that knowledge, that insight you have to bring about that better life, not just for yourself, but for others. You can be instrumental in other people's lives when you are, the one or one of the people that is who's helped them to experience a better life, to know how much better this new way is, and help them to not just in showing them and telling them, but helping to bring them along from the place they were to where they wanted to go and now are. I just want to, share some things about health. I mentioned about how, the most of us, if not everyone, would say that health is important, but many times our lives would say otherwise. And there's some statistics here I want to share with you. Here are just a few. It says of Americans, actually, I should take that back. It says of the people in the U.S. So it's not exclusively to the American, could be other nationalities, but here in the U.S., 23% of all adults have arthritis. That means, greater than 1 out of every 5. That's 23 out of 100 people. And it's estimated to be about 54 million people here in the United States suffer with arthritis. And then as we look at congestive heart failure, it says that there's more than 200,000 U.S. cases per year. Then as we look at diabetes, they say there's 34.2 million Americans who have diabetes. No, they say just over 1 in 10. So that's a little greater than 10%, And they say that 88 million American adults, have pre-diabetes, and they estimate that to be approximately 1 out of every 3. Then talking about, healthy relationships. They say that, here in the U.S., the current divorce rate is about 39%. That means out of every 5 marriages, almost, 2 are going to be dissolved into divorce. 2/5 would be 40%. 39% of marriages end in divorce. Let's look at cancer. If we look at cancer here in the U.S., it says that in just last year, in 2020, there was roughly 1.8 million people diagnosed with cancer. Then, if we look at the effect worldwide, says in 2018, there were 18.1 million new cases and 9.5 million cancer-related deaths worldwide. And they estimate, based on the previous data and what they've seen in the statistics, they estimate by 2040, the number of new cancer cases per year is expected to rise to 29.5 million, and the number of cancer-related deaths to 16.4 million worldwide. So, don't you think that's enough that we should start doing what we need to do, being who we should be? And the sad thing about it is not only do we many times not do those things, but, we even know that if we did it, we would have a better life. We'd enjoy life more. We'd experience greater success or have, just a better life all the way around. So why do we keep ourselves stuck in the rut? Let's step out of the rut. We're going to step away for 1 minute. And when we come back, I'm going to share some few thoughts to close this show and to conclude today's lesson. But first, we're going to step away for a brief break, and then we'll be back in just a minute.
Wow, that was insightful. Stay tuned as we go on a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Insights to Incite right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Are you seeking a speaker or coach who speaks life into your people? If so, look no further. Brandon Lawson is one who will inspire and motivate his audience, as well as empathize and relate to all. Reach out to Brandon and let him be your speaker and life coach by sending an email to brandon@connectandimpact.net or calling him at 513-520-7597. Brandon looks forward to speaking with you, to you, and for you. Let's connect and impact today. Insights to Incite, a real show with real-life messages. This show, which can be found on radio, TV, and our podcast, gives us insight to incite us to action and to excellence. Watch and or listen to Insights to Incite live at noon Eastern Time every Thursday on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Check out our past episodes on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Join us each week, and together we will escape the mundane. We are back with more Insights to Incite, so get ready and tune in to listen and watch. Now, once again, let's join Brandon Lawson.
So, we've discussed how we need to make it a point to do what we know we should do, as we've talked about health in our debut show on matters that matter. And one thing that we said is that most people don't like change, but if we're to lead, to exceed, to grow, to advance, all these different words that speak of moving forward, going ahead, being better, living better, knowing a better life, experiencing more joy, less sorrow, less pain. We have to change. We have to. And can we learn to grow to the point that we want to? And does that mean change will be easy? Many respects it will not, but some respects it will. As we learn to grow and to actually want change, it's easier to make that change happen. And I want to share a poem with you. This is written by a guy named Dick Biggs. And he wrote this poem, and it speaks to learning how to master change. And just bear with me a minute and I'll bring it up here. Says, life's turning points is as sure as the tide, just a matter of when, so why not decide to embrace these transitions as ways to grow? 'Tis folly to ignore what you already know. Make a vow to adjust to the crises of life. There's no reason to suffer more stress or more strife. Quite often change becomes a blessing in time, while making you wiser in pursuit of your prime. No change is impossible. No one is exempt. You can step out in faith or shrug with contempt. But most things do change. It's a natural law. You can believe this is truth or stand there in awe. It may be uncomfortable. It may cause pain. Won't a regretful heart be a greater strain? With every change, there's an outcome to bear. So accept the challenge, for life's seldom fair. Be willing to risk, and you're bound to find more courage and strength from a positive mind. Life has turning points. They won't disappear. rise up to greet them and conquer your fear. The choice is simple. It's as clear as can be. Will I master change, or will change master me? Which will it be? Will you master change? Will you learn to accept change and even desire change and to make change happen? You can make so much progress, headways, and get moving forward when you can make that change happen and you can defeat procrastination. It's up to you. It's up to me. Not the one beside me, not, when it comes to my life, it's not for my viewers here, or my listeners to be the ones to make it happen. It's up to me, just as it is up to you for your life. And while we cannot bring about a whole bunch of change on our own, it's up to us to institute it, to make it happen. But we do need to have a supporting cast, have people who will help make it happen. As there's really no such thing as a self-made man. I mean, we've heard that term, but we're all a byproduct of our experiences, our thoughts, our words, our what we've been through, what's been done to us, what we did, the life we've lived throughout the years continually shapes us and forms us into the person we are, that we see in the present. And the only way to see a different person as we move forward, a different person in the differences we want to be, is to decide today, to decide now, that that you will be that person you want to be, that we will make that change. And where areas where we need to recruit others to make something happen because we don't have that ability, or those, have that, we can't make that opportunity on our own, decide today that you will have the will, that determination, that you will go forth, that you will accomplish, that you will gather those people, that you will raise the funds needed, or whatever it is. That change is possible, and it will come. The change you want. Let's make it happen. And we're going to be back next week, as we are every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern. And I look forward to sharing with you then. And go forth, make it happen, and be that change. Thank you.
Wow, what an insightful show. Thanks for listening in and watching today. If you missed any part of today's show or any other episode, check it out on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Now take today's insight and utilize it. Incite yourself to action and to excellence in the week ahead, and join us again next Thursday and every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern Time for another insightful session with Brandon Lawson as he speaks to us and shares some more insights to incite right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV.